gooey cheese quesadilla. I mean, what could be better than that? I guess that's a kind of a rhetorical question. I mean, just think about it. There's grilled cheese sandwiches, pizza, calzones, cheese fondue. I mean, they all have that irresistible combination of melted cheese and bread. But you know, what could make this a little bit better is a homemade flour tortilla. Now, I know I'm the guy that's always showing everybody how to make corn tortillas. I just love them. But the truth of the matter is, it's probably easier to make a good flour tortilla. I mean, you probably already have all the stuff that you need in your home. You don't have to go rushing around looking for fresh ground corn masa or masa harina. I mean, it really basically just starts with this stuff right here. All-purpose flour. And then you'll need some sort of shortening to go into it. I'm gonna use some fresh rendered pork fat, but you could use some vegetable shortening too, if that suits your taste. Just be sure to get the trans fat-free variety. Then I need a little bit of water. For this recipe, I'm gonna need about 3/4 of a cup. And I'm gonna stir, well, just slightly under a teaspoon of salt into that, stirring it till it dissolves, and we're ready to put it all together now. Okay, we're gonna start with flour. And the all-purpose flour that I need here is about 3/4 of a pound. That'll be about 2 3/4 cups. And then the pork lard. Now you might be wondering why I'm using pork lard. It's because I just like the way it tastes, and it makes the richest, most savory flour tortillas you could ever imagine. I'm gonna need about 1/3 of a cup to go into our flour. Then the top goes on the food processor, and I'm going to pulse it until we get that fat distributed completely through the flour. Now with the machine still running, I'm going to slowly pour in the water. And when the dough comes to a ball like that, it should be slightly sticky. It's ready. No kneading is needed here, but it's ready to divide into balls that we're going to use to make those flour tortillas. Reach in and get a little bit of flour to sprinkle over the top of it. Pat it out kind of into a sausage shape here, and then using one of these scrapers, I'm going to cut it into 6 pieces, and then each piece in half to make 12 dough balls that I'm going to roll up and let rest for about half an hour on a plate covered with plastic. That'll make them easy to roll out. The dough is ready to roll, and I've got this really cool little rolling pin, perfect for rolling out flour tortillas. The first thing that we got to do is to lightly dust the counter and the dough ball with flour. And then I'm going to use classic rolling technique to roll these out, which means you roll away from yourself and you turn the dough about 1/4 of a turn after each roll. Perfect technique for rolling out pie crusts or pita bread or flour tortillas, whatever it is. When I get it to about 7 inches, I'm going to put it onto a cast iron skillet, the best thing to cook flour tortillas on. It's heated to about medium high, a little over medium, between medium and high. And immediately you should hear just the tiniest little bit of a sizzle, but you'll see these little bubbles start to form. After about 30 or 45 seconds, it'll be browned underneath, and flip it over and bake it on the other side. The more bubbles, the flakier, the lighter your flour tortilla will be. Okay, we'll take our puffy flour tortilla and put it into a cloth-lined basket here. Roll out and bake all the rest of them in exactly the same way, stacking one right on top of another. They'll trap all the heat together and finish their cooking kind of slightly steaming one another. And now back to the question of quesadillas. Gooey, warm quesadilla made with a homemade flour tortilla. Now, what could be better than that? Now, when I'm in Mexico City and it's Saturday and I'm in the mood for quesadillas, this is the place that I come to. It's called the Bazar Sabado, or the Saturday Bazaar, and it's kind of like an art fair with a very famous quesadilla stall in it. This is the San Angel section of Mexico City, and well, forever it's been the sort of unofficial hub of the art world. I mean, just a few blocks over here is where Diego Rivera and Frida Kahlo had their home and studio, and they were always inviting over other famous artists and intellectuals. Now, believe it or not, this whole collection of galleries and craft shops is only open one day a week on Saturdays, and this is that very well-known quesadilla stall that I was telling you about. In fact, it's a great place to get a lesson in the simple art of quesadilla making. The first thing that you'll notice is that there's no flour tortillas anywhere in sight. In fact, the first thing that they do is to take some of that fresh ground corn masa and press it out in an old-fashioned wooden tortilla press, lay it on a griddle, bake it on both sides, and then they add to it whatever toppings, whatever fillings you want for your quesadilla. You can, of course, have cheese or roasted peppers, but they also offer chorizo sausage, a little shredded chicken mixture that they call tinga, some cactus paddles with shrimp, or some stewed squash blossoms. That's fantastic. I can't imagine what could be better than this. Actually, I'll tell you tomorrow. Well, look, the Bazar Sabado is a Saturday-only affair. This is definitely its Sunday counterpart. I'm in the middle of downtown Mexico City at the old famous Lagunilla market. Definitely a little more rough and tumble than the Bazar Sabado. You might want to say that it's sort of like flea market meets antiques fair meets art auction meets pawn shop. But no matter what cool things you find here, don't pass up this stall. They make some of the best rustic quesadillas in this whole town. Señora, por favor, me gustaría una quesadilla de quelites con masa azul, por favor.
Una tortilla de masa.
Por favor. Gracias. First, she presses out a kind of oval tortilla with blue corn masa, then lays it on the hot griddle. When it's done on one side, she flips it over, cooks it a little bit longer, and then takes some of that Oaxacan string cheese, lays it directly on the griddle to get it started softening, and then scrapes up that slightly melted cheese and puts it on top of the tortilla along with some cooked greens. These are the lamb's quarters that they have here. Folds it over quesadilla style, and then serves it on a paper-lined plate. This is amazing stuff. What could be better than this? There's a whole new breed of restaurants in Mexico, well, especially here in Mexico City, that are embracing and reinventing the traditions of Mexican cuisine and culture. This place is called Paxia, which is the ancient Aztec word for peace. I think you'll agree with me that the vibe in here is all cool and calm, right in the heart of the world's biggest city. Places like Paxia prove a delicious point that I've embraced wholeheartedly for years. And that is that Mexican traditional classics can make a smooth transition into world-class fine dining. It's just all a matter of choosing the best ingredients, respecting the techniques, and thinking about fresh ways that you can present things. Now, here in Mexico City, you can go out onto practically any street corner and find somebody making fried quesadillas that are served on a piece of paper on a plastic plate. Well, here at Paxia, they miniaturize all of that and then serve them to their guests as a sort of delicate amuse bouche just to start the meal. My little crispy fried quesadillas with a swoosh of guacamole, a martini that's made with tropical black sapote and a foam on top that's infused with orange, a classic combination. I mean, I'm in the lap of luxury. What could be better than this? Now, so far we've only been talking about gooey melting cheese in quesadillas, and when you come to a Mexican market, like I brought you here in downtown Mexico City to the great big Merced, well, you'll find things like the classic Chihuahua cheese that'll melt, but now you can find a lot of manchego, Mexican-made manchego here. But to tell you the truth, in a Mexican market, what you find most of is cheeses that don't melt. I call them like garnishing cheeses, and they're a little bit like Parmesan. You can see all of this variety that we have here in front of us. You sprinkle it over the top of a dish, and it just makes the flavors pop. And then there's this. Now, if you think that that looks like a drier form of the American ricotta, well, you're exactly right. This is called requesón here. Now, that word ricotta comes from Italian and it means re-cooked. Requesón means re-cheesed, and I'll tell you why. In the cheese-making process, you add an enzyme or some acid or culture to milk to separate the curd from the whey, but that whey, that liquid clear stuff, still has a lot of milk solids in it. You can heat it up and, well, you get another harvest of cheese out of it. You get requesón out of it. Now, this stuff is a little bit drier than what we get in the United States and a little bit tangier, but oh, it's incredibly creamy, just melts in your mouth. Yep, you guessed it. You can actually make that beautiful Mexican-style requesón right in your own kitchen, and it's probably a lot easier than you think it's going to be, especially when you make the whole milk version. All you need really is just a really big pot and a thermometer for cheese making. A digital one will certainly give you the most accurate reading. And then, of course, you need milk. And not all milk is created equal. So you need to look for the best milk that you can get flavor-wise, which usually means that you're going to get something from a local dairy, preferably an organic dairy with pastured animals. Now, the first thing that we have to do is to pour milk into our pot. It may seem like an awful lot of milk for you, but you might not know the statistic that it takes a gallon of milk to make a pound of cheese. And then I'm going to add a little bit of buttermilk to this. Now that may seem a tiny bit odd, but it's going to add a lot of complexity. And to tell the truth, when I have the time, I'll let this buttermilk and milk mixture sit for several hours to culture, actually creating more complexity, more richness of flavor. Now we've got to turn milk into cheese curds. Basically, there's two different ways that you can do that. The most common way is to add rennet, an enzyme, to the milk, and it will separate the curds from the whey, but that's pretty complicated. You can actually do something much simpler and make your curd using acid. Now you could just pour a cupful of lime juice in there and it would create the curd. But actually an easier way to do that is to go to the store and buy something called sour salt, which is just 100% citric acid. And I'm going to put a teaspoon of the citric acid into a small dish and then add just a touch of water to it so that I can dissolve it. And this is what's going to set those curds. So our dissolved citric acid goes into the pot here. I'm going to turn the fire on underneath it to about medium heat. Stir this, and I'll continue to stir it every couple of minutes until the temperature that we hit here is 195 degrees. That's the most important point. At that point, we'll see the curds separated from the whey. Now, when the temperature hits 195, turn off the heat and let the mixture stand for about 5 minutes. You'll see the curds floating around in the whey. Then dampen a piece of cheesecloth and lay it into a colander. Put the colander into a bowl and then carefully ladle all of the curds into the cheesecloth lined colander. Now your final step is to gather the cheesecloth up over the curds, kind of twist it together at the top, and then use a spoon to press out most of the whey. Okay, you can see that we have squeezed about, I'd say a couple of cups of whey out of it since we took the curds out of the whey that's in the pot. And now the cheese is basically finished. I'm gonna unwrap it here and then turn it out onto a dish. See how beautiful that is? It looks just like that requesón that we saw in Mexico. Okay, now you could serve it just like this. It would be the absolute freshest taste, the milkiest taste. But I like to add just about a teaspoon of salt to it. So I'm gonna put that salt over the top of it and then just use a soup spoon to kind of work it in. Now we'll form it back into a little cake here. And the cheese, I think, is best if you refrigerate it for a couple hours, at least to cool it off. It's delicious at room temperature, but a slight chill is really good. Cover it with plastic wrap and it'll last for about 5 or 6 days in the refrigerator. Now I'm going to show you how you can turn this fabulous homemade requesón into one of the most luxurious taco and quesadilla fillings imaginable. It starts by roasting some garlic and green chilies in a dry skillet until they're completely soft and blackened and blistered on the outside. And then crushing them in a stone mortar. Well, you could do that in a small food processor too if you wanted to. And then you scrape your garlic chili mash in on top of the cheese. So if making your own homemade requesón isn't luxurious enough, wait till you see what comes next. I've got these beautiful squash blossoms. Picked these off of my butternut squash vine out in the back, and these are the male blossoms, the ones that will never produce any fruit. The way that you clean them is to pull the little sepals off around the base of it like that. Then tear open the blossom and pull out the pistil. I always break off this end of it right there. And then you cut these into about 1/4 inch pieces all the way across. Cut up a dozen of them or so, and then I'm gonna slice up some of that fabulous aged Serrano ham from Spain and mix that all into the cheese. Now it's time to turn that fabulous filling into a quesadilla, and I've gone all the way. Went straight to the tortilla factory and bought some of that fresh ground corn masa. It just smells so earthy and sweet. And I'm gonna press that out using a cast iron tortilla press. I've cut a couple of sheets of plastic to fit the base here. And I'm gonna take a piece of the masa, about the size of a golf ball, and lay it on the piece of plastic that's on the base. Put the top piece of plastic on, and then I'm going to give it a gentle press. I want this to be fairly thick, not as thin as a regular tortilla, but to ensure that it's evenly thick, I'm just going to give it a slight press on the other side. Now I'm going to peel off the top piece of plastic, and then I'm going to unmold the tortilla. Now you'll notice that I have all of my fingers together and straight, and I've lined the top of the tortilla up with the top of my hand, like that. And I've got the griddle heated to about medium here, and I'm just going to roll that tortilla right off of my hand and onto the hot griddle. Now after about 30 or 45 seconds, when the tortilla releases itself from the griddle, flip it over, spoon on some of our fabulous squash blossom homemade cheese and ham filling, and then fold it in half like a turnover. So you got to turn the quesadilla on the griddle for 3 or 4 minutes until it's browned and crusty on the outside and the filling is warm and toasty on the inside. Oh my gosh, it just smells so incredibly good. Okay, so I've taken you to see quesadillas at their absolute street stall best and then at their fine dining best. And now I'm gonna just bring all of that together to turn a street food classic into an elegant date night dinner at home. Salud. What could be better than this?
This looks so good. I'm very excited.
Here, help yourself with some guacamole for your fabulous little quesadillas.